Here's something that I've been finding difficult in processing. So your ZANU-PF colleagues say you've been used by the British to infiltrate the party. The opposition say he's a ZANU-PF project. To me, that reflects the issue that we've discussed earlier on in terms of our national psyche. The way we look at things. The opposition says you are a ZANU-PF project. They have no confidence and faith that a man can walk out in principle and do this. The ruling party does not believe that Simba Makoni can walk out of this, out of principle. There is the thing. The failure to recognize people who have convictions and principles and walk out. What do you say to that?
Well, you're right. It's what we talked about earlier, the denial syndrome. And our unwillingness to accept reality for what it is our biggest impediment to change. When I had conversations with leaders of the MDC, before I announced I was going to stand for president, and then after, because I still hoped that we could bring the opposition together and just have a two-horse race. I confronted this reality that you were explaining, that people didn't think I was honest, that I had been planted to divide the opposition vote. They didn't accept that I could feel so uncomfortable in a party that had been my life, short life even at that time, to say I'm walking out. So, yes, it's the one big task that we have to work on, to change our mindset as a nation, that people can do things because that's what they believe in. That's what's in their heart and in their mind, not because they're somebody else's stooge. Also, to accept that we are responsible for our condition. It's not somebody else. So if Simba Makoni comes to contest as president, as a presidential candidate, he's been put to it by somebody else. Even, this hurts me a lot, because this is what Ian Smith used to say. If you remember, he would say, our people are the happiest Africans. It's only a few instigators who are being pushed by the OAU and by the non-aligned movement. Today, we say exactly the same. When our people say we are hungry, President, we are afraid, President, we are in fear, he says, no, it's not them. It's somebody else who is saying it through them. They are only his master's voice. It's sad. For a leadership.
And you say it breaks your heart.
It breaks my heart, Trevor, because, the whole essence of the armed struggle was about being ourselves, believing in ourselves, doing for ourselves. And for people who have been through that to now turn around and say they don't believe Trevor Ngube can hold a view and a belief that's different from mine, except when it has been implanted in him by some outsider. It's tragic.
It is tragic. It is tragic. So Simba, we just move to the new dispensation. You have known President Emmerson Mnangagwa for a long time. Why have we gotten to where we are so quickly? There was a time, Simba, why I'm saying that 2 years ago, when people thought things were going to change. I was one of those people. Did we misread Emmerson Mnangagwa? Or this is the real Emmerson Mnangagwa?
First, let me say, if it's not impolite, what new dispensation? There is no new dispensation. Firstly. Did we misread? Who we have is Emmerson Mnangagwa. I can't say I know him very well. We served together in cabinet at independence. We served together in the party at various times. But I would be dishonest if I say I know him as well and as closely as I knew other people, or even as I knew President Mugabe, for example, who I said I used to spend a lot of time talking to on a whole range of issues. I didn't have the same relation. We were cordial colleagues in a team. So I can't speak much about his personality, but the character he is displaying as President of Zimbabwe is as I know him.
So nothing surprises you?
Again, I don't want to sound like I said so. When the 18th of November took place, I didn't participate. I had a conversation with Morgan Tsvangirai, and I called Joyce Mujuru as well. And when the inauguration took place on November 24, again, I had a call with Morgan Tsvangirai, and I advised that he shouldn't participate in that because I didn't think that this was real change. Trevor, I say this with tongue in cheek because obviously time has passed. But when it happened, and I want to suggest to you, the viewers and listeners who have the opportunity, to go and read General Chiwenga's statement before Asante Sana. And also to read Sbusiso Moyo's statement
announcing
the president is safe. If you read anything in those statements that has anything to do with the condition of life of the people of Zimbabwe, if you see anything that doesn't have to do with power, the power contest between two groups within ZANU-PF, then I will come and make a public apology. Because those two are what signaled to me what really was at stake. It was a contest for power within ZANU-PF.
Has anything surprised you?
No, I'm afraid not.
Having been...
What has surprised me, let me not lie.
Sure.
Yes. What has surprised me, as we all can see, is how what you call the new dispensation, to what extent they can go to secure their power. Mugabe didn't put soldiers on the streets at all. He didn't put soldiers with live automatic rifle ammunition among the people. This dispensation doesn't hesitate to do that at all. So that is different.
And to your point, which
different, worse.
To your point, which I was going to miss, which is fundamentally important, is that this was not about the people.
Yeah.
This was about them securing power for themselves.
Exactly.
And what comes with that?
Everything that we are seeing. Concentration. Concentration of power, but also continued contestation. Because wresting of power from the G40, as they put it, didn't secure power among themselves. Because the contest continues right now. Factions have not ended. But also because power is a means to an end. What is the end? Accumulation.
6 kgs of gold.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we've touched, Simba, on the issue of who we have become, the corruption. And the question I want to ask you is, when did we become so attached to material things like cars? many cars for ministers, big houses, the big convoy that the president and everybody else has. Where did that come from? Is that who we've always been?
I would say yes, Trevor. I recall very clearly that when we came into office in 1980, we inherited Ian Smith's systems. And Ian Smith's ministers drove Peugeot 504s. They drove themselves from home to work in their Land Rovers and all in kinds. Most of them were farmers. They parked their Land Rover and then they used the government vehicle when they were at work with a chauffeur. When they finished at night, they packed them and they took theirs to go home. Within the month of our coming into office, Prime Minister Mugabe then directed that every minister be issued with an E-Class Mercedes-Benz. And the Peugeot 504s were retired to permanent secretaries, and the deputy ministers who then took over. We can also look at many other things, small they may appear at the time. Let me hazard that even at that point, Enos Nkala was our Minister of Finance. I don't think we knew what budget we inherited from Ian Smith when the decision was taken to buy those E-Class fleets for the ministers. So the material, affection for material things has always been with us. And the differentiation also, even going back into the camps, zwe mashefu, nezwe my comrades makada were not the same. So much so that even today, when the so-called Minister for Presidential Affairs or Provincial Governor, as they were, goes to Bubi or Binga, they will be served separately and differently from the other people. The avarice grew as we began to exploit the opportunities of office. When I was in the government, the minister was allocated one vehicle that they kept, which was the sedan they used in town. If you needed to go off-road, then your ministry hired off-road vehicles from the CMED, and you were charged for it. Now a minister will have an average of 4 vehicles in his forecourt, all at government's expense.
So the leadership modeled the wrong kind of behavior, and that kind of behavior permeated all across our society. Our CEOs, like you're saying, heads of parastatals and so forth, modeled from the top.
Indeed. Indeed. I made a passing reference that we have CEOs who will buy themselves a luxury car when they can't pay wages at the end of the week or end of the month. This has been so entrenched in our psyche, this showing off, as if you are a different person. You're breathing different air from those who don't drive Prados and Land Cruisers, from those who don't drive Jeep Cherokees. We have lost our humanity. There's lots of reference to Ubuntu, very farcical, superficial, not coming from the heart.
That loss of humanity, Simba, manifests in the way we have this high disregard for life.
Indeed.
The toxic language and the violence. Talk to me about that.
Again, it's something that we have had for a long time. There was violence during the struggle on both sides. I hear young people who are setting up the Museum of Liberation. I hope that it will be capturing the truth. Some of us will say it was justified because we were at war. Whether it was violence taking place in the protected villages or Selous scouts torching whole communities or comrades beating people up at Epungwe. We can explain it differently, but that doesn't change its nature. Violence has been the anchor of our hold on power.
And again, Simba, correct me if I'm wrong, that modeling has percolated to the street level, to Mbare, to Makokoba. That's how we resolve our problems.
Exactly. Unfortunately, you know, it's sad. You may want to recall this. I think it was in 1988 or just before 1990. Robert Mugabe was campaigning in Chitumbizo. And he said, we have degrees in violence.
I remember that.
And in 2008, in the runoff, Robert Mugabe says, how can what I acquired by the gun be taken away by a pen? So this is deeply entrenched in our personality.
How do we undo it? Is it possible, Simba, to undo that? The toxic language, the violence. I know you said work, if work needs to be done, it's got to be done. We've got to start somewhere else.
Yes, Trevor, it can be done. But more importantly, it should be done. How do we do it? I don't have a recipe like baking a cake, which says add 2 spoons of sugar and flour. But what I know is we have to do it if we care about the future of our country and its people. Those of us who see that the way we are is wrong. If we haven't started, we must start working. If we have started, we should work harder. I don't think we can create classes where we teach people how to be humane and human, where we teach people to live Ubuntu. I don't think we can do that. But we can demonstrate it by the way we live our lives.
So to go to your point that work needs to be done, should it not start with visionary, inspirational leadership that evokes the sense of pride in who we are? You know, that kind of...
It would help if we had such leadership. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have it. So it's going to have to start with an individual. And I want to see a process that I call the concentric circles of a ripple. You throw a pebble on the water and it will ripple. It will ripple until the whole pond has felt the ripples. That's what I see as feasible and realistic in our current circumstances. But who knows? There may emerge such a leader as you described, who has a vision of a Zimbabwe that is caring, a Zimbabwe that is compassionate, a Zimbabwe that is honest,
loving,
a Zimbabwe that is loving.
Simba, do you think, you've already spoken about the new dispensation, that there isn't a new dispensation. Can ZANU-PF reinvent itself? Can it reimagine itself? Or it's headed the way of KANU and UNIP?
Firstly, no. ZANU-PF cannot reinvent itself. That's why I left. Remember earlier on I said there was a time, a long time, I believed we could make change from within. There was a time also, there used to be conversation around the old guard. people thought we were doing things the way we did because we were old. We didn't appreciate the modern world. We were stuck in our ways in Chimoyo, in the camps. But how many generations have taken leadership in ZANU-PF in the last 40 years? And how many of them behave differently from the old guard? It's a culture. It's deeply ingrained. So I don't think ZANU-PF can reinvent itself. KANU and UNIP lost power and conceded. ZANU-PF will not. So from that point of view, they will not head the way of KANU and UNIP. But ZANU-PF ceased to exist among the people a long time ago. It was a conversation I had with President Mugabe before I left. You know, we have structures of leadership. So you can call your DCC, you can call your provincial executive, you can call your central committee, but without the coercive force of the state, and political scientists have talked about the conflation of party and state.
Yeah.
If you want a rally at Muzokomba, the GMB, ZESA, Zinwa, they send their trucks out into the village to bus people to the rally point. How many of those are genuine card-carrying members of the party? And how many are coming because kuchajiwa nyama, nedoro? Or because vanzi kwirai rori na sabuku? So, the demise of the party has been long with us. We deceive ourselves that because we can convene a congress or conference of 7,000 people because we've sent buses and trains to come to the congress venue, therefore we are among the people. The party ceased a long, long time ago to be among the people.
Wow. Simba, some people say the elections are not going to be the way to resolve our current political crisis. There's a talk of a national transitional authority. There's talk of an all-stakeholder national convergence forum. I think these being an admission that the things that you've highlighted, corruption, violence, toxicity, no value, no compassion, that we basically need to press the reset button. Do you have any views on the NTA and the all-stakeholder convergence platform?
Certainly, elections have not given us the democratic dispensation that we believed the armed struggle and the liberation struggle was bringing for us. Barely a decade into our independence, we were already at each other's throat. ZANU and ZAPU, ZANU and Zoom, ZANU and Forum, now ZANU and MDC. We've never had a normal political environment right from independence. So when you're searching for change, it's justified that when one route has failed, you must look for another route. And because of that, I understand why there are calls for a transitional national authority, there are calls for a national convergence platform, there are calls even for a Sabbath from politics. My take on this is, let's not really focus on, is it 7 years? But the concept is that let's take a break from toxic politics. Let's take a break from adversarial politics. Let's come together and say we have this one country, all of us, and that it is our obligation together to rebuild it.
But that threatens those who are in power.
Unfortunately,
and it threatens those who think they will get into power, and there's not going to be purchase of that idea. Am I right?
At the surface, yes, Trevor, you're right. But there will come a time when those in power will realize that it's a mirage, it's a figment, that they're in power because they can set soldiers on the people, is not being in power. That you hold the chairmanship's office because you bought the voters who came to vote for the chairman, is not being in the chair. They must realize that sooner or later. So, yes, I think...
How much hope do you attach to that?
Trevor, for as long as I can still breathe and there's air in my lungs, I live in hope and aspiration that we can make the change that we deserve. And that I will play my own small part, make my own small contribution in the making of that change.
Having been in, worked for SADC for quite some time, what's your view on the notion that we need help from outside to resolve our problems? And some people say, no, we are an independent country, we are sovereign, we will resolve our own problems. And you've said before that our future is in our hands.
Precisely. You know, you recall the slogan that drove us during the struggle was, we are our own liberators, with the help of our friends. There was that attachment, but principally, we are our own liberators. Unlike those who want to believe that we are where we are because of outside actions, we are where we are because of what we have done to ourselves. That earlier discussion about do we acknowledge that we have problems that need to be solved? I accept. We have put ourselves in this situation. And I accept further that we must put ourselves out of that situation. We must take ourselves out of that situation with the help of our friends. It cannot be SADC's primary responsibility to solve Zimbabwe's problems. It can't be the EU's. It can't be the African Union's. Nor even the United Nations. It's our primary responsibility. So together, and this won't be done by one person or one entity. It's not going to be the MDC. It's not going to be the churches. It's going to be all of us together. Selflessly, honestly, compassionately, believing we must create a different society for ourselves and those who come after us.
So from our conversation, one gets the sense that, somebody said, every nation gets the government it deserves. Do we deserve this government?
It's a harsh saying, but unfortunately, it's a true saying. The Americans deserve Donald Trump. We deserve Emerson Mnangagwa. Because we allowed Emerson Mnangagwa to be where he is and to do what he's doing. I don't want to sound churlish or simplifying our problems. But quite frankly, if we conducted ourselves differently, including those who are inflicting so much pain on the majority of us, we wouldn't be where we are. So we are responsible by commission or by omission. So yes, I'm afraid I concur. It's a harsh saying, as I said. When you look at the suffering that our people are enduring, you can and you must conclude that we don't deserve this. But when you take it from the standpoint that we are responsible for who is leading us, I don't know what the statistics are for 2018, but for the best part of this decade, barely 30% of us went to vote in any election. And when I studied these statistics in 2008, this was one of the factors that buoyed me into believing we could make it. Because we thought if we mobilized even just 25% of those who don't go to vote, and half of them voted for me or for change, we would win. Of course, we hadn't countenanced about the rigging and the refusal, but just assuming naively that the votes would count, the numbers would have made change for us. Not just in 2008, but even in 2000. Remember when we rejected the Constitution in February, and then elected the MDC into a majority in Parliament in March? We were making change then. So it is from that standpoint that I concur with the saying, every nation deserves the leaders it has. But obviously we don't deserve the drudgery that has become the hallmark of Zimbabwe today.
Have people lost faith in democracy? Have people lost faith in their power to change? From what you're saying, that you looked at the numbers and thought there was a majority out there which could make a change. What's your view on that?
It's difficult to say yes or no, Trevor, because we have no way to measure it. We are so preoccupied with survival. Every one of us, every day, is doing only that which enables us to survive today so that we're there tomorrow. How much space is there in people's minds to look at whether democracy is working or not working for them? But that's exactly what we need to work on, to create space. But then we also have the physical impediments that, COVID apart, you could not convene 1,000 people to share clearly, openly, honestly about the state of the country and how to create a better future. They say they have amended IPA or repealed IPA, but we have just renamed it. So I don't have a way of measuring whether people have lost hope. But if I follow the conversations I'm involved in with my employees on our farm, with my relatives in our village, and with my friends in our clubs, no, we haven't lost hope, because we are all searching for how can we make the change that we deserve.
As we get towards the end of the conversation, Simba, you've just right now indicated that you're still hopeful, and for as long as you have that breath in your body, you'll continue to be hopeful. What message do you have, Simba, for the young generation? I'm going to put you on the spot here, Simba, and say your generation is messed up big time. Your generation has poisoned the young people's minds, contributed to the toxicity. What message do you have to give hope to those that are struggling right now, to get into farming like you're doing, to get into, to be entrepreneurs, to imagine a new kind of politics, to envision a new Zimbabwe? What message do you have that cuts across all that?
Before my message, Trevor, let me just affirm that I'm an eternal optimist. I just don't have hope. I have ambition, yearning to participate in the making of change. So I'm not just sitting there and say, oh, I hope 2025 will be different from 2020. I'm searching for how can I be part of making 2025 different from 2020. That's where my optimism comes from. I'm looking for participation. I'm looking to contribute. I'm looking to play together with others, with you, with the millions of Zimbabweans outside there who are yearning for a normal life. So yes, I am hopeful. I am optimistic.
That's good.
And I believe Zimbabweans will make the change they deserve. But what message do I have for the young people, particularly, but also even for the older people, for all the people of Zimbabwe? I would like them to go to history and read a statement that Ian Smith made in 1976. War of liberation was at its peak. And Ian Smith says, there will be no black majority rule in Rhodesia, not now, not tomorrow, not for 1,000 years. That was in 1976. And in 1980, black majority rule came to Zimbabwe. Short 4 years. So we have time to make change, but we must haste, even though we have time. I say to the young people, easy come, easy go. Don't be deceived by what you can get easily on the streets. But more importantly, what you work for, what you create for yourself, what you labor for, what you sweat for, is real. What you get given, what you steal, or what you rob won't last and isn't as good. So let's work together. We who have messed up, those of us who acknowledge that we have messed up and we must correct while we have the opportunity to correct, would like to share our experience at messing with the young people who will create the new Zimbabwe. I have absolute faith in young people. Not just the glib, the young people are our future, that many people pass out at big meetings. Yes, the young people are our future. I was a young person. But young people have energy. Young people have creativity. And particularly young people of this age have skills and expertise that we didn't have in 1963 or in 1959. So because of those attributes, those assets, I have total faith that our young people will remake the Zimbabwe that we destroyed.
Wow. That after the conversation that we've had, I've taken off my jacket because it gotten too hot because of the conversation. Simba, you've just summed it up there and given me, and I think a lot of viewers at home, quite a lot of inspiration. Let's turn now, Simba, to my favorite segment of the show, which is the books that you have read and why you have read them. If you could just highlight 2 or 3 books that you've read that you're recommending to our viewers at home, in the diaspora, and all over the continent.
Yeah, Trevor, I've read many books, but 3 stand out. The first one I read when I was in Form 3.
Wow.
And I'm embarrassed to say I only remember the title. I don't even remember the story.
Right.
It's a book that was called, or is still called, Don't Let Them Scare You. I don't remember what the story was. I read it when I was in Form 3. And the title just caught me, and that title has influenced me in many things that I've done. Don't let them scare you.
Right.
The second book that has had a real impact on me is a more recent one. It's a book that's called Why Nations Fail.
Oh, yes.
Many people have read that book. It's profound.
I've read it twice.
You've read it twice?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has had a very, very strong influence on me. The last one that I finished 2 months ago is called Leaders Eat Last.
the title speaks for itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are 3 books that jump of all the books that I've read in my life. And I say, whose other ideas have influenced me from my reading? Don't let them scare you. Why Nations Fail. And when, as you have done, read Why Nations Fail, and you put us on the spot, you will see why we are failing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simba, this has been an amazing conversation. You know, we could go on and on. And you've been very systematic in dissecting our problems and in certain instances providing the solution. I like the hope that you represent and the hope that you model as you continue to work to find the Zimbabwe that we all want. My prayers are with the work that you're doing, and hopefully that 1976 and 1984 year gap is even shorter for us in terms of finding the kind of country that we all want. So Simba, thank you so much for leaving the Tobago farm and putting on a suit to come and join us. We absolutely appreciate that. So thank you so much. Allow me, Simba, to tend to our viewers who are in the diaspora, who are on the continent, who follow this show every week, to thank you all so much for watching the show and making it the success that it has become. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking onto this red button here, and then you get notification every Monday at 7 a.m. Zimbabwean time when we have a show out. We have gone further and created podcasts for every conversation that we have. And if you scroll down after your comments, you'll find a link that invites you to subscribe to our podcasts. We appreciate the comments below our conversations. Let's keep the comments coming, keep sharing. So until next time, thank you so much and cheers.